Hello, everyone. I'm Nina Gopal. Welcome to Global Express. This is the weekly interaction with experts where we deconstruct developments in our backyard, our immediate neighborhood, and beyond. Do click on the new Indian Express website and tweet and follow Global Express. As 2024 begins, many of India's neighbors with whom we share borders are caught in domestic political turmoil. Pakistan faces an economic and political challenge. Myanmar has a civil military conflict since the 2021 military coup. Nibbling at our border is an increasingly aggressive China. But the one country that India is concerned about is Bangladesh, its only real friend in the neighborhood, where general elections are set to be held in a few days' time. This is a neighbor with whom we've had excellent ties. Bangladesh is marking its 52nd anniversary of its emergence as an independent country. We could see sitting Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajed, who heads the ruling Awami League, return to power for a record fifth term. Where does that leave the opposition Bangladesh National Party with its senior leadership, as in the case of former Premier Khaleda Zia, under house arrest since 2018, pushing for a caretaker government to oversee the polls? The same demands were made by the Jatiya Party of the late military ruler Hossein Mohammad Ershad. There are new parties in the fray, 29 in all contesting, hoping to woo voters who no longer trust the two giants. Especially as the economy, Bangladesh is one of South Asia's biggest success stories. The economy seems to be flailing. Is that going to be a factor that will impact the polls, get the crucial swing votes eaten into? Or will this be a repeat of 2014 and the 2018 elections, which was seen as a farce, a sham? Will it be acceptable at home and abroad? And what is the US aiming to do by threatening sanctions? Talking us through these issues today are three eminent experts on Bangladesh. Syed Badrul Ehsan is a highly respected Bangladeshi journalist and political commentator and author who writes for a slew of publications across the world and is mentor to many journalists. Thank you, Mr. Ehsan, for coming on the show. We also have the battle-hardened former Foreign Secretary, Shamshed Chaudhry, who actually fought in the 71 war before he joined the Foreign Ministry some years later. He's represented Bangladesh in the UN, at SAARC summits, at the OIC, in the Commonwealth. Welcome, Mr. Chaudhry. You've floated a whole new party, the Trinamool BNP. Very curious choice of name, if I may say so. And last but not least, we're deeply honored to have Dr. Sri Radha Datta. She's professor, OP General University, and a visiting fellow at the National University of Singapore, and author of a number of books on South Asia and Southeast Asia. Thank you, Dr. Datta. So I'd like to start with you, Mr. Ehsan. The conclusion that is being drawn is that Sheikh Hasina's party will be re-elected, that the Bangladesh leader is going to rout her opponents, that after a record consecutive 3 terms, she'll sweep into a 5th term, making her the world's longest serving female prime minister. But will it be seen as a sham? I mean, the Bangladesh National Party is boycotting it. Many of the BNP's rank and file are behind bars, many in hiding. Some have died in custody. And the criticism is that the Awami League has silenced all the opposition, the police, the judiciary, and even the media. How do you read it, sir?
As you have mentioned already, and as all of us know, the elections of 2014 and 2018 had a lot of questions attached to them. And this time also, the expectation, the idea is that Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League are going to come back to power, and the Awami League will have a record 5th term in office.
That's right.
5th consecutive term. Now these elections, elections that we will have on the 7th of January, they will need to be seen as credible as they can be. The problem is the leading opposition, the BNP, is once again boycotting the election. It boycotted the elections in 2014, and then in 2018 it went out of the election even as the voting was in process. This time, and this time also, the party is completely boycotting the election because it has its own, as you realize, it has a demand. Its demand is that the government should step down and hand over to a caretaker or interim government, which the ruling party has not acceded to. Now, a number of opposition leaders, the BNP leaders, are in jail. So that raises the question of how credible the elections will be, or how the world, the rest of the world. Now, see, India, Russia, China, and particularly the United States, they are focused on Bangladesh's elections. So we need, I mean, by we, I mean the people of Bangladesh need to see a credible election where people are actually seen to go to the voting station, to the polling booths, and to be seen to casting their vote without any interference. Now, to what extent the election results will be regarded as credible without the main opposition BNP coming in, that's a question that we'll have to see right after the we'll have to deal with after the elections are over.
Would you like to come in, Mr. Chaudhary? Does your party have a take on this? What happens to the BNP? Will it run out of steam? I mean, boycotting one election after the other, it doesn't give it. Will they be seen as even relevant? And you had October protests, which were bloody. Thousands are in jail. The November lockdown, the protesters were very small numbers. But I hear that outside Dhaka, the situation is pretty grim, that the BNP is blockading movement of goods, and they've demonstrated that they will fight violence with violence. What do you have to say, Mr. Chaudhary?
Thank you very much. At the very outset, let me share my deep emotions on a particular day, 16th of December, when India and Bangladesh shared blood for a common cause, which was the liberty and freedom of the people of Bangladesh. More than 1,100 Indian soldiers sacrificed their lives for our freedom, a war in which I had the distinct honor of taking part, and I carry a wound in my body, a permanent disability. However, over 52 years, I believed, and I have demonstrated that to be disabled is not to be unable. And I am honored to be along with my Indian friends. Shiraza Datto is a very, very close friend, shoots from the hip, doesn't matter which forum she is in. And that's what I like about her most, in addition to being a brilliant mind. The thing that a couple of issues have come forward. You said the Bangladesh National Party is boycotting. That is not totally correct. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party is boycotting.
Nationalist Party, sorry, yes.
Our party is Trinamool, which is grassroots, BNP, which is Bangladesh National Party.
Yeah.
So we are taking part in this election. Our party is very, very new. And in spite of that, the fact that we have been able to put up 142 candidates who have been cleared is not a small achievement by any standards. We hope to do well. The elections are free, fair, and credible. If the law enforcement and the administration behave neutrally, which they have not done in 2018 or 2014, if the election commission, the current election commission, does play its role that with the powers, the immense power that has been given to it under our constitution, I believe it will be a relatively good election. Now, why I'm saying relatively good election? Because there are a lot of independent candidates.
That's right.
But they are all from the Awami League. So
yeah. So there is a game there. There is a game there.
There is definitely a game there. It's an Awami League against Awami League. And then we are there. The Jatiya Party will be there. I believe the Jatiya Party will be there. But the Jatiya Party has made its case very weak by saying that wherever, or at least in 40 constituencies, seats, they do not give the Awami League symbol or the Awami League candidate and give only a Jatiya Party candidate, which is a sham. I mean, the whole demand shows how, I don't know, Badrul will agree with me, how bankrupt the Jatiya Party has become. You know, I mean, they are saying, okay, we'll fight the election, but please don't give a Awami League candidate there. Our party has not said so. In my constituency, for example, which is in Sylhet and very close to the Indian border, I have two Awami League candidates. One is the official Awami League candidate. He's still there. I don't know if he withdraws at the last moment. And there is the independent candidate from the Awami League, who's pretty strong, besides
so,
being
Mr.
loaded.
Chaudhary, what is the game? Why is the Awami League putting up dummy candidates?
Well, as far as I understand, the plan was to have a large voter turnout or a larger voter turnout. So if we have more than two candidates, both from the same party maybe, but because there's so much infighting within the Awami League, there is a possibility that the voter turnout will be pretty strong. And then there are candidates like us who could draw a sufficient number of crowd. Now, what I am encouraged by is the response from the people in my constituency, both the two upazilas, Biani Bazar and Gulabganj, that for the first time in the history of the country, perhaps, and certainly the first time in the history of Gulabganj and Biani Bazar, a wounded, decorated freedom fighter has become a candidate. And that resonates very deeply with the common people. You know, if I go to the market, if I go to the shops, if I go to the fishermen community, they say, okay, thank God we have a freedom fighter now. And on 12th of December, just 3 days ago, 2 days ago actually, was the Gulabganj Mukti Dibosh, which means on that day, Gulabganj became free. Gulabganj was liberated with the help of the Indian Army. And there was a very big event by the freedom fighters of the whole area. And I was chosen as the chief guest, not the Awami League candidate, not the Awami League pretender, yeah. They chose me, the freedom fighters who are composed of most of them Awami Leaguers. So said, no, it's not who the party person. We want to have a freedom fighter demonstrate or celebrate this day for us. So these are things happening. The game plan, as I said earlier, is to be able to hope that we'll have a relatively voter turnout, which will perhaps calm the feathers somewhat of our Western observers. Now, my own point of view about how the West is looking at democracy and human rights and
we'll get to that. In
Bangladesh, I need to compare that with what they're doing in Gaza.
Yeah,
so I think the moral high ground is no more there.
I know.
They have totally surrendered that.
I agree. Dr. Datta, if I can bring you in, you know, there's a whole slew of new opposition parties which have come up, you know, including, as you know, Dr. Chaudhary said, Mr. Chaudhary said, you know, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the Trinamool Bangladesh Nationalist Party. So, what do these parties, new opposition parties, you feel represent? Do you think they're going to look to replacing the BNP, or is it, you know, what is it? Are they for real? What do they actually do? What is, I mean, Sheikh Hasina seems to be on a roll. I mean, the opinion polls are already giving her a 70% approval rating. So the victory is assured.
I haven't seen the latest poll that you're saying, which is given approval, because certainly some of us are not giving the approval, but that's a different matter altogether. No, I mean, there is the fact that some new parties, and of course, Mr. Shamshed is here, very dear friend, and there are more options for, you know, the voters. But at the same time, and I've said this always, that Bangladeshis, Bengalis are very political. You know, inclined. So it's not that they don't see through the games, but at the same time, what are they supposed to do? I mean, you know, the first-time voters, the mid-level voters, everybody wants to believe that they have a role in the government that's going to be elected. The 14 and 18, none of them did. So I'm sure that, yeah, I mean, 14 and 18, you use the word sham, I'm not, but that's really the accurate word. So there was no voters cast really. I mean, you know, it was, let's not get there now. But so right now, and I think a point that Mr. Shamshed said again very correctly, Bangladeshis look up to freedom fighters. They hold a place in their heart and mind that nobody else does. So, you know, to have leaders like him in that sense and others come in, at least there's some choice for the electorate. Especially because, I mean, in my visits to Bangladesh, I often engage and interact with youths and university students, and they have expressed their despair about the fact that earlier they were not able to cast their votes, their first-time voters, because of the way things were. So this time there'll probably be a different situation, and I think the government is going all out to ensure that through fear, threat, whatever they're doing, to ensure that the voters do turn out. Again,
So-
Bangladesh earlier, before this kind of a convoluted situation happened, had probably the best track record in South Asia in terms of voters turnout, which was a huge, again, a civil society initiative which has worked very positively for Bangladesh. But at the same time, coming back to your core question, the fact that a large political party, and I would say there are two large political parties, Awami League and BNP. BNP
Yeah.
right now, as you mentioned, is leaderless. I completely, agree with that. But at the same time, they do have a place. There's a constituency for them. And the fact that they are out again of this political electoral race is not going to bode well.
Where does this leave the leader, I mean, the so-called leader in exile, Tarique Rahman? I mean, he lives in London apparently, and yet there are the protests that the BNP has actually held in Dhaka has been pretty bloody. There is someone who's orchestrating it.
I would say the blood has been, both the hands are bloodied. It's not a one-way traffic. Historically, traditionally, and sitting in India, I would say that, BNP is certainly, extremities, violence, terror was something that we always associated BNP with. But in this particular right now electoral race that we see in the last few months, I don't think it's only a BNP doing. It has also a very particular way of trying to position them as the bad guys. I'm not saying who's good, who's bad, and politically everybody has their own manipulation, negotiating spaces. But this has been where, the bloody situation has been created, not only because of one particular party that we mentioned, but also because of the other repressive measures.
No, you're right.
That were
You're
used
right.
on
There are reports that the mobs were being led by the Awami League also. So I mean, both
Absolutely.
sides were, seeking a confrontation for whatever reason. Mr. Ehsan, if I could bring you in, there's also a very strong feeling that the election commission isn't exactly above board. I mean, in the sense it stands accused of constitutional violations following its decision now to impose a 3-week ban on all political activities except election campaigning from December 18th to January 7th, and opposition parties have criticized the commission for sort of shutting down all political discourse ahead of the elections. And they've asked the Home Ministry to ban public rallies, public gatherings. What do you have to say, Mr. Ehsan? Is this an acceptable course of action? Normally, people campaign till the very last day.
No, it's not acceptable at all. You're right, because election in democratic countries where there is democracy, people do campaign till the last day, till the last 24 hours before the voting begins. So when the election commission imposes these curbs on political activities, rallies, and debates and whatnot, that is not acceptable. And then again, there's a story of our election commissions. We've had different election commissions, and none of them, not a single election commission, as far as we are aware, has been able to exercise the kind of authority that election commissions in other countries, for example, in India, for instance, say the authority that the election commission exercises in your country or in other countries, that kind of authority has never been exercised by a Bangladesh election commission. Now, the present election commission, of course, the chief election commissioner, has been trying to give the impression that on his stewardship, the election commission will be different. But then, it has called in certain candidates of the ruling party and other parties to explain why they had violated the code of conduct. But then it has not been able to rope in everybody else, to summon everybody else there. But beyond that, to your question again, no, I think the election commission needs to, it has always spoken of offering a level playing field to all the parties. But then a level playing field means that you allow all political parties which take part in the election, or even which do not take part in the election, to be out there on the streets, to be out there in the auditoriums, in the different halls, at the universities, elsewhere, to come forth and express their views. So, but to restrict these activities and ask the ministry, the Home Ministry, now that is something which I believe it undercuts the Election Commission itself. You are running the Election Commission. Why should you appeal to the Home Ministry to ensure that these activities do not take place?
What is Hasina afraid of, you think? Why would she do something like this? I mean, this is her behind the scenes, right?
I don't think she is afraid, or she should be afraid. But let's say, from an individual point of view, if the elections had taken place with the BNP taking part, and if all-out campaigning had been done, the government would have had a great opportunity to project the economic achievements that it has made in the last 15 years, its foreign policy, which is pretty balanced at this point. So it could have focused on these things, and the Awami League, the BNP could have focused on what it believes to have gone wrong with the country in these 14 years. So a properly open electoral campaign before the public, people, touring the country, politicians, political leaders, campaigning throughout the country. That would have resulted in a more contested election. People would have been able to decide which party to vote for. So, given the present situation, economically speaking, the economic situation, the diplomatic situation, the government is on strong, solid ground. So, which should have been a reason for it to see to it that the elections are conducted in a fair way, in a way that allows the opposition, the leading opposition party, as well as the new parties which have come up to take part in the election. So it's not a question. I mean, in politics, I mean, there should not be any question of fear. See, one should stand ready to accept the people's mandate, whatever that is.
Exactly. Mr. Chaudhary, if you can come back in, why is it that Hasina has not agreed to a caretaker government? What is it that that the Awami League is worried about? Because, I mean, they are clearly ahead, and yet they don't want one. Why is that? If you could look at that, and if you can also, you brought up the US. The US has, ratcheted up its criticism of of Bangladesh's democratic backsliding during Sheikh Hasina's crackdown on the opposition. But Washington doesn't really want to push Dhaka into, I think, China's arms. So I think it's sort of toned it down. And one hears that even the observer teams that they were going to send, are not really going to be there. Neither the EU nor Britain nor the US is going to send observers. Am I right, or is it just talk?
Yeah, you're right. As of now, what we're hearing is that there won't be election observers, which is just as well, because why sovereign country elections should be certified by foreign observers? I mean, what do they know about Bangladesh? As somebody coming from Kansas, what would he know about Nilphamari, the realism of Nilphamari? So I am personally against foreign election observers unless they're from South Asian countries who at least have an idea of what our societies look like. Now, 1991 election, which I think was the fairest election in the history of Bangladesh, and perhaps the last time we had a real fair election. It was held under a non-party caretaker government that was agreed by both the Awami League and the BNP, consisting of the chief advisor becoming the chief justice becoming the chief advisor, and 10 chosen people, eminent people from the society. And it was a well-respected caretaker government. That election was free and fair. That time we had election observers. I was the national coordinator for all the foreign election observers from the Foreign Office. And the advantage in that election for observers or for the voters was that neither the BNP nor the Awami League had the baggage or the strength of incumbency on their side. Both had been out of office for a very long time, but both were in the election for the first time, so the incumbency factor was not there. And The only one election observer team that I thought was most credible was a Sri Lanka-based, a Colombo-based observer group called ICES, International Center for Ethnic Studies. They were mostly dealing with the Tamil issues in Sri Lanka, but then they had a network which covered the rest of Asia. And that team included people like former Chief Justice of India, Krishna Iyer. We had the famous, film stars, Aparna Sen. She came as a human rights Jahangir, Asma Jahangir from Pakistan. So we had quite a galaxy of foreign observers. The Commonwealth ones were, I'm not too impressed. Somebody coming from Guyana, not even knowing where Dhaka is. So, but that scenario has changed. Now, why did the Awami League doesn't want a caretaker government? It was they who first fought for it in 1994, 1995, along with the Jamaat as a partner. Not the Jamaat was part, but it is a co-player in that. And that election, although was not that not party system was not 100% good, none is. But by throwing it out, we actually threw out the baby with the bathwater. If it had flaws, you could have corrected it, changed it, but they used High Court judgment, a short verdict of the High Court judgment to do away with that. And
would Bangladesh benefit? Would Bangladesh benefit with a caretaker government?
Actually, what happened is because the lack of the distrust, the mutual distrust between the political parties is so deep, that's why the people want a neutral body to run the elections.
That's right.
That's what it comes down to. But one must also remember that in 2013, when the Awami League was in office, the Election Commission again was an Awami League formulated one. 5 major city corporations elections were won back to back by the BNP, and a series of by-elections by the BNP. So in spite of not having a caretaker government, in spite of having an election commission chosen by the government of the day, the voters, voted against the ruling party. Now,
and there was no interference, and there was no
interference at all. And so, I mean, okay, local elections are not the same as national elections. Local elections do not change the government. Local elections have their local dynamics. But I think some kind of now, I must credit Sheikh Hasina that in 2013, when the BNP was demanding the return of the non-party caretaker government, she at a very public meeting announced, I mean, Badrul will remember that, okay, let's have an all-party government, parties that are in the parliament, a small government of 10 people. The prime minister will remain as prime minister, and BNP will get 3 cabinet posts of their choice. That was the best offer that the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina made. And the BNP shot itself in the foot by summarily rejecting that offer. And that was perhaps the beginning of the end of beginnings of BNP's political or electoral strength. And then they went on to boycott the 2014 election in spite of so much advice from everybody. I mean, the Indian High Commission himself, High Commissioner Pankaj Saran was here, the American ambassador, the British High Commissioner, the United Nations Special Secretary General, representative of the Special Secretary of the Secretary General, Oscar Taranco, came to my house and said, please do not boycott the election. You stay on the field, we'll ensure many observers, we'll ensure a level playing field or the best possible level playing field. The government has given you 3 ministries to choose from. You can have control over that. And, BNP could have chosen the Home Ministry, which you put the police under their control. They could have chosen the Human Resource Ministry, which you chose the district administrator under their control, and the Law Ministry. But they rebuffed that. And then, of course, that infamous visit by your Foreign Secretary, Sujata Singh, on the day before the election, I think, didn't make India look very good. So, but, 154 seats were elected uncontested even before the first ballot was cast. Now, and then of course, the infamous 2018 election where reportedly credible reports suggest that the votes were cast the night before. So what this caused is the people to turn, or people said, don't believe in election at all in Bangladesh. Oh, no, the outcome is, we know. And this also resulted in a distrust of politicians. And I'll quote a story from Pranay Verma of NDTV. He said this political leader goes to a village and he said, what are your major problems? and the villagers say, we don't have a health clinic, proper health clinic, we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough staff. And this local politician picks up his mobile telephone call, makes a call to somebody and said, I want all this to be done within 1 week. Make sure everybody is here within 1 week. So, okay, then he said, I've solved your first problem. What is your second problem? So the villagers said, we don't have mobile network in our village. So
who was this man talking to?
So who was he talking to? So this is the depth of distrust that has, and this is sad for a country like Bangladesh. Our liberation was not just an armed war. It was a political war, very much a political war. We fought as soldiers, but the umbrella was political leadership. Bangabandhu,
that's right.
Speech, and then all of that, and the way the India, played the role that it did play, which most brilliantly brought out in late Chandrasekhar Dasgupta's book on the Bangladesh Labour, which I think is a brilliant book. And so those things, those values have just evaporated. So my party's pitch to the public is, let us restore confidence in the politics of the country. Let us go back to the values of 1971, non-communalism, democratic rights of every citizen to prosperity. Some will buy properties in Canada, Australia, Singapore, elsewhere, and some will go to the market, local market, not be able to buy onions.
Yeah. If I can just come to you, Dr. Datta, where does this leave an exile politician like Tarique Rahman? Is he backed by outside forces? Is it China? What is it that gives this man a role? I mean, does he have any relevance?
Like in any typical South Asian, we've seen how the family,
politics.
yes, works. And I think BNPs certainly at the senior levels have some very mature, very good, competent, able leaders. But the family umbilical cord, as we see elsewhere too, is something which
has not been cut.
In Awami League, we see it in BNP. But just one point I want to add to the other speakers. In this case of the way the situation is unfolding, the way the hostility and that very, very uncomfortable situation, the real electoral issues have been lost. I mean, real issues have been not brought to the foreground because you are constantly discussing other issues which are completely irrelevant at times. What would the youth look forward to another? I mean, right now, of course, what somebody mentioned about how Bangladesh has been on a fabulous growth journey, and I totally appreciate right about that. I published on that. But right now, in the last 1.5 years, Bangladesh is deepening into an economic.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
I see no reference to that.
Yeah,
the food inflation by their government statistics is the 12% or more, which has been the highest ever. I mean, I know when I talk to my friends how difficult it is and what are the price, differences that's happening. Why is nobody talking about these issues?
And also it's not you, the Bangladesh government's foreign reserves have dropped to $21 billion. And the taka, I believe, is under pressure. They're saying the official inflation rate is supposed to be below 10%, but everyone's saying that's a bogus number. And the country's most important industry, the garment industry, is in a state of flux. The workers are very unhappy. I was going to ask you about that. What is the growth rate? Is it 6% or what? I mean, and why is the IMF now praising Dhaka after giving it a $4.7 billion loan? It's now saying that, it's on the road to recovery. Is that an accurate call, Dr. Datta?
No, I think the financial infrastructure in Bangladesh is a problem. While, the growth story again, and I constantly argue about this, that irrespective of the political instability in Bangladesh, Bangladesh has, over the years from, 70 onwards, has a very kind of a confident upward journey. which has stagnated. So it's really nothing to do with the leadership, of course. And in India too, we tend to believe it's always about the leaders. It's not. It's about the people. The capacity that Bangladeshis have, the way the ready-made garment industry, which you mentioned, is so robust. It's because of what the people have been able to, do with it. So in that sense, but what we have seen now in terms of the economic crisis, that's been brought on by only a very small section of the people who've completely mismanaged the funds, where banks have cheated people, cheated themselves, and taken fraud loans, which everybody, these are all public domain knowledge. I have no access to other things. And in terms of the deficit that they face now, not only in forex, but in fact even in bilateral deficit and everything that they're doing. Look at the infrastructure development, which is fabulous, I agree, but look at the funds which have been used for let's take Podda Bridge. 4 point some billion man, in India, as you know, we've got similar bridges coming up over Brahmaputra, over so many other things. The estimates start somewhere and they treble over the time, and every particular, and there again, these are open World Bank statistics, that any infrastructure cost in South Asia is 2 times, if not more, than any other in South Asia. In Bangladesh, I mean, comparatively. So again, where are these funds going? Obviously, there's a huge level of corruption that we're not talking about, and which has
So it's being siphoned off.
absolutely. And there's recently some studies being also brought again out about how there's been a flow of funds from the country because people are scared about the instability there. So obviously, a long, some of these
Yes,
strong.
I hear that a lot of properties are being bought by by Bangladeshi businessmen in London and in America and Australia.
And I'm surprised what IMF. We had many conversations with the Bangladeshi friends, and they thought IMF would help them restructure the financial structure that we're talking about, because that's been very ad hoc in Bangladesh always. But I do not see any such thing. And more importantly, if you're going to be in denial, it's so difficult to address the gaps, and there are clear gaps. And the gaps, I'm just quoting government statistics to say there are gaps. It's not anybody's who's picked up statistics from the hat. It's not like that. So obviously those need to be addressed. In fact, somebody other day in another platform we were discussing from Bangladesh mentioned that whichever government comes in now, they'll have a problem running the government because there's nothing there. So first and foremost, somebody has to have faith in you to bring in more funds, and let's see how this goes. Unfortunately, because of the divisiveness of the nature, these issues are not being discussed. And it's always the common people, even these hartas and all that, the common day-to-day workers are losing their livelihood. Who pays for these costs? It's terrible. I mean, the elites always have a different, way forward. But in terms of the larger population, which is obviously not the privileged section, they're paying the price for problems that the political leadership has, unfolded.
If I can come back to you, Mr. Hassan, I was very curious about the Chinese, building infrastructure projects in Bangladesh, because India's own outreach, it's the most robust relationship that India has with any of its neighbors. I mean, despite the Teesta River, India has made infrastructure connectivity between Bangladesh and India a top priority. With Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Sheikh Hasina jointly inaugurating the Akora-Agartala rail link, the Khulna-Mongla port link, and this Maitri super thermal power plant. It raises India's stakes in Bangladesh's politics. Don't you think so, Dr. Hassan? Or is China, how does China manage to get its way in?
Yeah, about the Chinese connection, I think my belief is that the government enjoying such deep and deeply rooted relations with India, not just the government, the two countries, Bangladesh and India, and with the Indian government taking part in a number of projects which you mentioned coming up in Bangladesh. We in Bangladesh, or the government of Bangladesh, has been very careful to see to it that nothing happens to affect Bangladesh's relations with other countries, especially India. And we have been very careful about the Chinese role in Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and the Chinese, a lot of African countries falling into a debt trap because of Chinese involvement. So I think here, I would say the Bangladesh government has perhaps maybe in the beginning it was tempted to follow the Chinese lead as the lead as it was seen in Sri Lanka and in Pakistan, Gwadar, the Gwadar
That's right.
the Gwadar port that they have developed from a village to what it is today, and also the African countries, the debt problem, the debt trap. So I would not I'm not very worried about the Chinese entry, or if I might use the word, infiltration into Bangladesh's economy, because the government and not just the government, I think the other political parties in Bangladesh, apart from the ruling party, they will also be careful in future to see to it that while proper diplomatic relations with China are maintained, they are not maintained at the expense of the national economy, or to use another word, national sovereignty, because our links will always be related to the region, with India and with South Asia as a whole.
And with Myanmar, where you have a problem, finding a refuge for the Rohingya refugees.
That's one area where we are concerned, because these million plus Rohingya refugees have been there, and with Bangladesh's economy not being in very good shape, as Dr. Datta pointed out, we need cooperation from the international community, but more fundamentally from our neighborhood. Now, the Chinese, they maintain very good relations with the Myanmar regime, so they have not come in. So we think the Indian government, after the elections in Bangladesh in January, after the elections in India in May next year, I think it would be proper to expect the Indian government to play a better role, a leading role in convincing Myanmar
more
to take
proactive
back its
role.
citizenry. More proactive role, because the Indians can do it. Here, the West, we don't expect the West to come in, because they're always praising the Bangladesh government for taking care of the refugees, which is okay. But then to have them go back home requires the cooperation of countries like India, like China. Well, China has not been coming in. Russia is embroiled in its own dispute, problems with Ukraine. So that leaves the Indians. And I think the Modi government and the Sheikh Hasina government, assuming that it returns to power on January 7th, they can work out a modus vivendi to persuade or to coerce the Myanmar authorities into taking back what Dr. Datta said. Well, I fully agree with her. Yes, in this election campaign, our politicians have been talking about democracy, about elections, which is fine. But yes, our politicians in Bangladesh, Shamshir Bhai is here. They need to focus on the issues that matter to citizens every day. For example, employment. We turn out lakhs of people from the universities and colleges every year, but the employment area is very limited. Then the question of health in the villages, in the small towns and villages, we have these health complexes, but then the doctors and the nurses who go there make sure that they can pull strings and come back to the
city.
Capital. And then again, the prices. I mean, when people have to go to the market and pay exorbitant amounts for onions and green chili, that is something that is of concern. In the election campaign, people will not be interested in what infrastructural development has taken place, what diplomacy has gone through. It's everyday needs. Say, if I go to the market and pay 240 taka or 180 taka to buy green chili, that I will, as a citizen, I will not look at those points. Then again,
that's a very good point.
And there's the question of law and order, security. So security, the police have to ensure that, again, a level playing field is maintained and that people they feel secure. The elections are coming. It should be the responsibility of the police to ensure that all voters can make their way to the polling stations and cast their votes without being intimidated or without being told that your vote has already been cast, so please do not bother, please go away. Then again, we had this recent times, the government, the workers, they have been agitating for a rise in their
That's
wages.
right.
And the deliberations that took place, workers' representatives, the government, and the employers' representatives, in the end, we saw that it was basically the point of the owners that was accepted, and what they got, what the workers got, was a mere pittance. And finally,
Yeah.
with this question of money being laundered out of the country, and we keep hearing reports that so much money has gone out and the money is not coming back. Who are these people? We know who these people are. The government knows who these people are. Why can't action be taken against them? Because if money goes out, people, Bengali families, families of businessmen, families of even civil servants, say mid-ranking civil servants, deputy secretaries, joint secretaries, they have bought homes in places like Canada, in places like America and the UK. How did that happen? These
And
are
Dubai.
questions.
Yes.
Yeah, and Dubai. And these are the questions that the politicians on the campaign trail should be focusing on.
That's the very good points, Mr. Hassan. I have a crackerjack of a question. It's quite a hot potato. I read somewhere that when Hasina visited Chittagong, when she wanted to campaign there, that she ensured that the orders were issued that all military personnel who were off duty should deposit their weapons. And that they said was very unusual. And then came the arrest of Lieutenant General Hassan Sarawardi for helping organize a press conference at the BNP's office. So the detention of politically active retired officers may not be uncommon in Bangladesh, is what the comment read. But Lieutenant General Sarwadi was supposed to become the chief of the army staff. So charging him with treason, and now the reshuffling of the top brass and empowering, intra-army loyalists, to show their loyalty to Hasina. Do you think that is a return of the army? Is there a civil-military conflict in this, or a civil-military arrangement in this? What do we see happening? Because when the army ruled Bangladesh, it ruled it with a very iron hand. I mean, I'd like any one of you to comment. You can start. You can come in, Mr. Hassan. Tell me what you think.
Well, answer my brief response will be yes. In a country which has seen a number of military coups, we have had two military regimes, General Ziaur Rahman and General Ershad, and there have also been instances of abortive coups taking place. And then, of course, the very tragic incident of an army coup led by majors and lieutenant colonels, which put an end to the life of the father of the
Sheikh
nation,
Mujib.
Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and most of his family. Then again, 3 months later, barely 3 months later, the death of 4 national leaders who took part, who led the government in exile, the Mujibnagar government. So these ideas are still there. That fear is always there. I wouldn't say fear. These historical facts are always there at the back of the mind, not just of the government, but of citizens as a whole. But about General Sarwadi's arrest, I'm not quite sure why what the charges against him are. But the fact that he did take part in a press conference, and even the BNP was embarrassed when they brought in a Bangladeshi American who pretended to be an advisor to President Joe Biden, and that was pretty laughable. So I would say, well, if charges are there, they should be properly investigated and openly investigated, so that people know what has happened and how these, if there is any conspiracy, if there are any sinister activities, they should be brought out into the open. And see,
Mr. Chaudhary, would you like to come in and comment on that?
Well, frankly, I have served in the Bangladesh Army, but that was long time ago. We have had mixed results with, frankly, speaking very candidly, with military governments. The fact that both the parties that were formed a military government are still alive and active shows that they do have some kind of a strength. I mean, some kind of attraction with the public that cannot be denied. Now, The fact
You're saying that the military still has traction with the public.
No, not the military. You see, there was a recent survey released by the IRI, International Republican Institute.
Yeah.
Very intriguing elements were there in it. I went through the whole report. I still have it on my laptop. One question was, is the Prime Minister going in the right direction? Now, 73% said yes. Now, that's a drop from 83% 4 months ago.
Oh, I see.
So, okay, 73% is still very good, but it's a drop. The other question, second question was, is the government going in the right direction? Only 22% said yes. So there's a contradiction. The Prime Minister is moving right, but the government is not. So one has to understand that. The most intriguing question was, which state institution do you trust most? 66% said the army. And politicians came down.
There you go.
Politicians came down to 7%. I am not happy with that. It doesn't make me happy as a person who loves democracy, who fought for democracy. But there is a public sentiment that is reflected in that.
That's so very interesting.
Why so? And I think more than 5,000 people were in that
survey,
the sample survey. And they're going to, I think they're going to come out another one very soon. Now, the fact remains that there are a lot of questions. The word Bakshal hangs in the air, even though it is a long time ago. People are saying this is Bakshal in different form, Bakshal without the name, that kind of a narrative.
What is the actual translation of Bakshal?
Bangladesh, Awami Krishak Bangladesh,
Krishak
Shramik Awami League. That was a one-party government that Bangabandhu had formed in 1975, which still, bothers a lot of people. Now, that's past history. Sheikh Hasina has moved away from that. She's given development now.
No, but she does apparently, stand in use Sheikh Mujib to promote herself. I believe Dhaka is plastered with posters of Sheikh Mujib
all over the country. Well, father of the nation should remain above.
Right.
That's my own belief. He should not be brought into the. Without him, there would be no Bangladesh.
That's right.
Frankly,
right.
I mean, there would never be a Bangladesh. Would be a Bangladesh.
I remember his speech where he stood next to Ms. Indira Gandhi and said, Amar Shonar Bangla.
7th of March speech, which is a piece of history.
Correct.
A great piece of history. So let's look at the current situation. Sarwardi, I have studied Sarwardi for a while. I think he is frankly a fake. He's proven to be a fake. It is he who brought in this fake advisor, who then apologized to the public. Now, he had this press conference at the BNP office, of which he's not a member. Sarwardi is not a member of the BNP.
That's very interesting.
So, how did he make that entry into the BNP office? He's a retired military officer. At one time, he was full of praise for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and even her sister. But now he seems to have gone in the other direction. So maybe he has his own agenda and he needs to account for that. Yes, I agree with Badrul that they should be properly investigated, thoroughly investigated. Who is this paid court gesture who turned up saying, I'm President Biden's advisor. I send 10 telexes to President Biden every day, or 17 emails, some of them to which he responded.
No, but it is scary.
Yeah, but then it gives the BNP a bad face.
Yeah.
That you have people coming into your office addressing the media with fake promises. So there is
it also has the element that, like Mr. Ehsan said, the back of everybody's mind, that the army could re-enter politics in some form or the other. You don't agree with that?
No, the trust in the military is not for running the government. They look at the military as a good professional institution, has earned a name for the country under United Nations, and has has shown remarkable. I was having a discussion on military diplomacy with another Indian think tank the other day. Sorry, at the National Defense College in Bangladesh. And I said, our military diplomacy has been a success story in the sense that when I was High Commissioner in Sri Lanka, President Premadasa approached us and saying that can Bangladesh provide military training to our military. The
Wow.
Sri Lankan military
Very interesting.
was in a mess. Of course, bounced it off my Indian friends, and they said, okay, you can go ahead as long as only military training, not military supplies. And so far we have trained close to 2,000 Sri Lankan military officers over a long period of time. And now they start with the military academy and go all the way to the National Defense College. We've done that with Maldives, we've done that with Nepal. So we have a good track record of military diplomacy. So all these give the military a good
better
image.
standing, yeah. If
but
I can
not
just,
necessarily a military that should be running the government.
Not something that would
So one
dismiss
has
a government.
to do it, see it in that perspective. Now,
Correct.
China factor. I must admit, and I've said that in Sridhar's brilliant book, Bangladesh at 50. She asked me to write a chapter on the 50 years of Bangladesh-India relationship. I said, China took advantage of the decision of India to actually withdraw itself from Bangladesh post-1975, politically, military, economically. And China came into that with full force. China's big investment is not in the infrastructure projects. It is in the defense. I think 70% of our equipment comes from China. So our military is now, actually totally fixed on the Chinese.
China-centric.
They like China's weapons, they like China's training, all kinds of things. When India was giving one brigadier at the Defense College, National Defense College in Delhi, China at that time was giving each time 8 brigadiers were going to China. So we see the differences, and I was deputy head of mission in Beijing when this was happening. All our F-7s came from China, our artillery guns came from China, tanks came from China. Now we are trying to diversify. But I agree with Badrul that not just the Hasina government, even the last BNP government, when I was foreign secretary, then Mr. Saifur Rahman, finance minister, a very strong finance minister and a very successful finance minister, a great friend of Dr. Manmohan Singh, said that every Chinese assistance program will have to be put under the microscope. So the China factor is there, but China factor should be a worry both for India and for the United States. So the US pushes us too strong that they may end up losing. So I think that the China factor will not be a major thing. I don't think we'll walk into a death trap. We are in a bad situation anyway. What's happening politically in your neighborhood, Maldives, India out slogan by the new president. Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe now making a U-turn, looking at Beijing.
Right.
So all this is happening. But we have been able to balance ourselves well. The other fear of instability is the rise of the Islamic forces in Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
That I think somebody has to keep in mind very, very alive.
Yeah, that's something that we should look at again post the election. Ms. Datta, concluding remarks to you. You've got exactly 50 seconds, sorry.
One hopes that this is not going to be a sham elections as in the past. And also because of what has been happening in the last 6 months, the fundamentalists are out on the road. That's not good for anyone, Bangladeshi or India or anyone. And I think that's something that we need to re-examine very, very strongly. It's going to come to bite all of us at some point. So I'll close here with an optimistic note that I hope elections are going to be credible. I have my doubts, but let's see what happens.
But the Rohingya factor may also play a part in the rise of the fundamentalism.
Yes, that is a game that we have not actually addressed. That's true. That's true. But thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary. Thank you, Mr. Hassan. And thank you, Professor Datta, for this fascinating discussion. It's taught me a lot. Please click on the New Indian Express icon to watch Global Express. Thank you, viewers, for joining us.